Oliver's not applicable here because there is no confession here. If there's a confession of Donna Adelson, could someone please send it to me post haste? So hence the confession.
Those podcasts have in the comments that the public makes are where we are seeing the most significant prejudice, the vitriol towards Mrs. Adelson, to her son, to her daughter, and we also see in those a number of podcasts. I ran a search yesterday. I counted over 20 different episodes just focused on inadmissible information. I mean, we're sitting here, we have reporters typing behind us. This hearing is probably being broadcast live, and...
Shit, he knows I'm here. Hide, quick, guys.
What I learned from the defense expert is that there's been a lot of publicity in this case, which I think we all already knew, as is their right to report on a case that's been of high interest to this community.
Guys, hello, how are we doing today? Donna Adelson is back in court today. It seems like she is arguing for a change of venue. And based on Court TV's description, it seems like they brought in Bryan Kohberger's expert to testify about that. I wonder if this is the same expert who testified. And then remember, Bryan Kohberger's trial was initially in Latah County, but then it was eventually moved to Ada County. So I wonder if Donna's attorneys picked up, the headlines, was like, oh, let's argue for Donna. Let's say that the jury pool is potentially tainted with all the news, all the coverage. And so we want to have a change in venue and have Donna's trial elsewhere. I think that's what they're probably going to be arguing.
The Idaho case, is that the case that we're probably all familiar with, where 4 college students were slain back in 2022, I think? Insufficient staff and insufficient security.
One moment.
May I finish my question before there's an objection, Judge?
Please finish your question.
Why were Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson lumped together for purposes of that presentation?
I would have to speak with the client and the media monitoring team.
Who made the decision to lump Charlie in with Donna in the data included on Defense Exhibit 1?
I would say, I don't know. So these are 26 opportunities to see the specific story about, I believe in this case, Donna Adelson.
Okay, but it's got Charlie lumped in with it, doesn't it?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So would it surprise you to learn that previously when we've asked jurors about this case, we get about a third that don't know anything, a third that know the headlines, and a third that have more detailed information? Does that comport with your work, or does that seem inconsistent with your work?
I like this judge. I feel like this judge, to me, seems like a really balanced, level-headed judge. And so far, I haven't had any issues with this judge so far. Only his fucking courtroom, because the audio, whatever we're doing to capture the audio here, it sucks, okay? I want clear audio.
I believe Singer was 1959.
Yes, sir.
Cases that are almost as old as my father, they're still good, but they do change over time.
1959.
I agree, Your Honor, but...
Do see Mr. Murphy is already in the Zoom. Mr. Murphy, good morning, sir. I think you're muted right now.
I only do this 10 times a day.
It's okay, Mr. Murphy. That happens to me all the fucking time. You good over there. Mr. Murphy is like, how do I unmute this shit, man?
Good morning, Your Honor. My apologies.
Good morning. Good to see you. The technology helps it be more convenient, but at the same time, well, at least you're not like the lawyer who was, I believe, on the Zoom saying I'm not a cat.
The morning is young, so I'll try to avoid that.
We're doing much better in that regard. All right, I believe previously in preparing for the hearing today.
I have permission to share my screen so that Mr. Murphy can...
You may.
So Mr. Murphy isn't there. I believe he's the Bryan Kohberger defense expert, and I think he's on Zoom because I saw the judge basically allowed the expert to testify via Zoom, which is why the audio is not the greatest when he talks, unfortunately. But here it is. All right, so he's a fishbowl here. So this is Todd Murphy of TrueScope. That's the name of the company. He is the one who is going to be doing something called the media intelligence. And what encapsulates media intelligence is media monitoring and media analysis. So media monitoring, you're tracking and you're indexing media for stories, he says. And then media analysis, also called insights, is the analysis of that data, quality and quantitative information. So he's basically hired to say that, like, hey, I analyze the media and all the stories that have come out about this. probably locally as well, where they're going to pull from the jury. And it's possible that the jury pool could already be tainted and Donna Adelson won't have a fair trial. That's basically what they're going to say. That's what I'm guessing.
Social media, it's more of a
So basically how he's getting all of his information. He says TV, radio, podcast, print, magazine, social media, and then he's going to talk about, I guess, gathering. Now, let me jump around here.
So if Judge Everett wanted a report each morning, for example, of anybody talking about him, he would get, at whatever specified time, a report of all media, or if there's no media today, he would get a report saying there's no news about you. That's the media monitoring side. The media analysis side then takes all that data that we've captured for a specific topic, and we run some automated systems against that to generate media dashboards, charts, graphs. That's mostly for the quantitative side. Once the quantitative side has been developed, then we apply our methodology for the qualitative analysis.
I will say this, though. It is not this expert's fault that the audio sounds like he's in a fishbowl. He's on a Zoom call. We're capturing his audio via speakers, I think, over the court. We don't have like an actual feed from his audio. So that's why it sounds like shit. It's not his fault.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your background and training. Can you tell the court about your background in media intelligence and analysis, please?
My family has been in the industry since before I was born. My father purchased a press clipping service, as they were called, in the late 50s.
All right, so his background, he began broadcasting monitoring since 15 years old. His family did it. He's a college grad, and then he started doing media analysis, qualitative media analysis. He has a degree in radio, TV, and a minor in psychology. Now they're talking about 1991, something that he developed. All right, so just wrapping up his background here. In the 90s, he developed software. One was a methodology of comparative media analysis. He would compare one entity against another. For example, healthcare systems, how performing in both media mentions, in impact, and in reach. Whether or not they're leading or trailing, he said. And then he developed the first software/database for tracking TV stations. He mentioned something about closed captioning, and then he would extract them from multiple channels.
I have.
Approximately how many times?
I think this will be my fifth formal testimony. We've done consulting for attorneys all along where they simply receive the data. But in terms of testimony, similar to...
All right, he testified 5 times before, and I'm assuming Kohberger would have been one of the 5. All right, so they are going to bring him in as the expert. And let's have him talk about this case.
Now, on a factual level, how closely have you followed the murder of Dan Markell in the state of Florida versus Donna Adelson?
I have not followed it at all, personally.
You're trying to sell the poor old woman look. Pardon my murder trial because I'm old with an ear infection. And I think in one of the videos that I covered recently, I said that she had sciatica. I think is it sciatica or multiple sclerosis? No, sciatica, right? Yeah, I think she had like sciatica. Yeah, I have a friend that has sciatica. It sounds like it really sucks. Actually, I have another friend that thinks he has sciatica too. He's been wearing like a back brace thing. All right, so he did an inquiry for Donna Adelson, Charlie Adelson, and then possible typos of those names, and he's going to go back as far as 2014, and that's when Dan Markell was murdered.
As far back as 2014 to 2025 for some of the data, and then we also did a June 2023 to May 2024 sample analysis.
And this tab indicates there were 233 mentions of Donna or Charlie Adelson during that time period, correct?
That is that's exactly correct. 233 rows, but the first row would be headers.
They also did a search for the co-conspirators. So Catherine McBanois, there was Garcia, which is the hitman, Rivera, also the hitman as well. They're going to talk about all the mentions in the media. They also did queries of Dan Markell, looked at broadcasts, looked at web content as well. They're basically looking over the Excel spreadsheet that he has and just breaking it down for the judge, I guess, each of the categories. Have I missed anything noteworthy? So we are having a motion for a change of venue filed by Donna's team, and they have an expert that they hired that was also an expert in Bryan Kohberger's case as well. And I think this might be the same expert who testified before Bryan Kohberger's trial was changed from Latah County to Ada County. So I figured maybe her expert was like, hey, this expert testified. It worked for Bryan Kohberger. Let's try it for Donna as well. So he's going to talk about how the potential jury pool that is in the local area right now might be potentially tainted, and Donna Adelson won't have a fair trial. I am assuming that's where it's going. So they can see where the impressions are coming from. These are people that are viewing the articles or the broadcasts. They could see by the location, the county that they reside in, the cities and all that.
Other media types. But in terms of broadcast, that would be the Nielsen audience rating based on their methodology and their standard for establishing how many people had an opportunity to view that story in a specific geographic region.
Would it be accurate to say that your team looked at the total amount of articles and broadcasts that were identified in the previous tabs and then sorted them based on market area?
That is correct.
And the total number of broadcasts or articles that were published and TrueScope was able to collect, what was the total for Leon County?
2,371.
And then where did you get the total number of adults in Leon County from?
That would be from the most recent census numbers from the government. So that's obviously census.gov has that data. We use that data to pull the most accurate.
So Leon County, this is the 376 opportunities to be seen or potential impressions that we discussed previously.
So he was looking at the media coverage in the past 11 years by county in Florida. For Leon County, there were 376 opportunities for a potential jury pool to see coverage about this case. I think that's what it means. And then for Miami-Dade County, the opportunities were 2. So it seems like most of these were over TV news were the predominant type of media coverage. And then he said next was print media, which I'm assuming is like also like online, digital, not just like magazines, right? Okay, car crash. Let's see what they say about that.
Appeared in the media about the car crash. Let's see, six stories were reported on that topic, generating just over 935,000 opportunities to be seen. And I'm just reading at the bottom, the story appeared over a 3-day span in a population of nearly 160,000 residents based on census data. And then we apply, I believe either in Florida or in your county, the jury eligible age is 18. And so we calculate only those over that age in our viewing population.
And so with that calculation, the jury eligible resident had 6 opportunities to see one of these stories based on.
That's correct.
This exhibit, what is the total number of juror eligible individuals according to census data in Miami-Dade County?
There's over 2 million in Miami-Dade.
Versus how many in Leon County?
Just under 160,000.
So we're kind of just learning the foundation of what he does. I kind of want him to jump to more about this case.
What was the volume of story? And again, it's that same 1-year time frame, June of 23 to May of 24. What was the volume of stories in Leon County?
283.
And what was the volume of stories in Miami-Dade County?
It was about exactly 60 less, 223.
Oh, okay. Here it is.
Now, over the lifespan of this investigation, July of 2014 to present, based on your analysis, do you have an opinion on how the span of time has impacted the media coverage in the case?
Yeah, I can certainly provide my opinion. In my experience, it shows a topic of interest to the media where the story has you may have heard the phrase, the story has legs. It has captured the interest of the media over time. Some stories, such as a car crash, at this point in time, it would be nearly impossible to find anyone in a county where a car crash occurred that could remember any details of that story. This is indicating repetition over time and volume of impressions over time are high. So what I would start thinking is I expect to see in the numbers a higher level of retention based on saturation of an average citizen in a geographic area.
Okay, so again, from July 2014, which is when Dan Markel was murdered, to the present, he said that that is a span of time that impacted media coverage of this case. And because this, I guess they didn't catch Donna ASAP, and this story has been in the news for over 11 years. He talks about the story having legs, which is I guess a phrase. I've never really heard of that before. Capture the interest in media over time. And he talks about how the repetition and volume pressure are high. And you would expect a higher level of saturation of average citizen in that geographic area. Now, I think he was just like using the car crash stories as an example. And then now they're getting to the math of it, which I'm like, do we want to get into the math of it?
Valid results. The more a person is estimated to be exposed to a story, the longer they'll retain up to 80% of the details of a story.
The person you're referring to with this is someone of average intellect with no defects.
Right. Again, it's when we say jury eligible population.
Really? Retain 80% of details of the story? I don't know. I feel like the number is really high. 80%? Okay.
That doesn't account for anyone who might be exempted for a reason other than age.
Please continue.
So he's saying the more you're exposed to the story, the more you retain it, and an average person of average intelligence would retain about 80% of the details of the story. I don't know if that's like after how many times you see the story repetitively. And then he talks about the mathing of how they do it, and then they were able to calculate too, possibly 336 exposures to, I guess, Donna Adelson and her story in the span of, 11 years.
So, Mr. Murphy, since TrueScope
All
was
right, we're about like almost halfway there, guys.
not able, TrueScope in this case was retained in January of 2025, correct?
Correct.
She wants to go to Miami. Oh boy, maybe because she's more prominent and she knows people in Miami. They do have a very successful dental practice.
And so what you're saying about the social media and podcasts is because you weren't retained, you weren't able to go back in time to collect the data from social media and podcasts.
That is correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination. Does that microphone work?
I think so, Judge.
I can hear you.
Mr. Murphy, can you explain your fee schedule associated with your work on this case?
Wait, travel expenses, 1 day, $10K? Wait, what? All right, so his fees, $1,500 a month for the media monitoring. And if you want to add analysis on top of that, that's an additional $1,000 a month. And then he mentioned something about like, if it's just 1 day travel expenses, engagement, $10K. If it's virtual, then $4K. Holy shit. Damn.
Do you know how many potential
money.
jurors have actually viewed content related to this case?
No one can know that number for certain. So I think what we're looking at is possibility. Your question revolves around possibility versus probability. We're working with probability and statistics. When you want to say, I'm sorry, I answered your question. I won't go further until you ask me.
So the answer is no, we don't know how many potential jurors have actually viewed. We're basing it on averages and probabilities.
Correct.
Okay, and so is there a way that we could find out if an individual potential juror had viewed content related to this case?
I believe that's part of what would be done in the jury selection.
And could we also ask the juror, how long did you view the item? How much of it did you retain?
That's right. Yeah, in Bryan Kohberger's case, they did do phone surveys where they would call and then do their surveying. The Adelson dental practice could go with a new slogan, smile like you're innocent.
Do you have any data or probabilities about what percentage of potential jurors have formed a fixed or definite opinion about the guilt or innocence of this defendant?
That's a complex question, which I would not have.
In your affidavit that you provided to the court in this case, 3 prior hearings were cited. I know you said 4 previous hearings you've testified in, I think. Is that right?
Including this one.
Okay. So 3 prior, and how many of those hearings was the change of venue granted?
In the 2 earliest ones, those...
Kohberger would be 1, right? Because I'm assuming that's the expert that testified, and that's why they moved from Latah to Ada.
I believe one was moved from Sarpy County to Douglas County. That was in the 90s, I believe. In the most recent case, which is just about 10 months ago, that venue was changed.
So in the Katanat,
Oh, 10 months ago. Okay. 10 months ago, so I'm assuming that's maybe Kohberger?
murder cited in paragraph 14 of the defendant's motion, that case resulted in a plea, right?
That's my recollection. I don't have that information in front of me at this moment.
So that venue motion was not ruled upon because the case resolved. Does that sound right?
That's my recollection.
Okay, and in
She got her
Nebraska v.
research.
Christopher Edwards cited in paragraph 15 of the defendant's motion, that motion for venue change was actually denied. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so we're just dealing with the Idaho case. Is that the case that we're probably all familiar with, where 4 college students were slain back in 2022, I think?
Yeah, that's
You're wrong
the
about
most recent one. But there's a little bit of an apples to oranges in the one where the venue wasn't changed. I was only asked to present on a report of media coverage. It wasn't a statistical analysis like this at this depth.
Okay,
This is-
and in the
yes.
Idaho case where the venue was changed, is that the same jurisdiction that's mentioned in your data compared to the data you prepared in our case?
I apologize, I don't quite understand the question.
When we see the map of Idaho in
Yes.
the exhibits that we just reviewed, is that referring to that case that occurred in Moscow, Idaho at the University of Idaho?
That's correct.
Okay, and in that case, the judge did change the venue to Boise, correct?
Correct. Ada County.
And would you agree that the population in that county of Idaho where the case occurred was significantly smaller than the population we have here in Tallahassee?
That is correct.
Okay, and in fact, in the motion that the court granted the venue change in that case, the court cited insufficient space in the courthouse, insufficient staff, and insufficient security.
One moment.
May I finish my question before there's an objection, Judge?
Please finish your question.
In that case, isn't it true that the judge, in granting the motion for the venue change, cited insufficient space in the courthouse, insufficient staff, and insufficient security, AKA deputies, to accommodate the trial of that case?
What is your objection?
Outside the scope.
It's in
I
his
believe part of his
affidavit,
testimony
Judge.
has been concerning his work in Idaho, is it not?
Yes, Your Honor, but we did not get into whether or not the venue motion in that case had been granted or the reasons for that in his testimony or in his affidavit.
But it's important to know if it was granted because of his research or if it was something else. Well, this is getting so interesting. Okay, so just dialing back just a tiny bit. So Georgia Cappleman, I'm assuming that's the one who's speaking, not because that sounds like Georgia Cappleman, right? Not Sarah Dugan, which I think is her name. Georgia Cappleman's doing the cross-examination, and she's going through his affidavit right now, and basically other cases that he's worked on. And she was like, okay, well, you worked on 3 prior hearings. How many of those hearings did you have a change of venue granted? He cited one from the 90s. There was another one with a girlfriend-boyfriend murder trial, but because I guess the evidence was maybe overwhelming, they made a deal, and the case was resolved. And then he's talking about 10 months ago with the kohberger case. Now, she's poking in that one because she's saying that, like, well, it seems like that population in Idaho is way less than the population in Tallahassee. And then just now she talked about the court cited insufficient space, staff, and security to accommodate the trial for the Idaho 4 murder trial. So,
As to the subject matter, I will permit the question. If you are capable of answering the question, Mr. Murphy, please do so if you have knowledge.
I can only answer to the portion I have knowledge on, and I believe it was cited that the testimony of the media exposure was also a contributing factor, but I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. My question is, there were other factors in play. You may know that or you may not. Are you aware of that?
That's out of my purview and role in this case.
That's not my question. My question is, do you know that that was in the order or not?
I will say no.
Okay. And we have had related cases related to this case tried here in Tallahassee. Are you?
no beach house for Donna. I mean, we'll see. The judge reserved his ruling, so we're not going to find out right now, but I'm going to keep refreshing to see what the judge decides. I feel like he decides pretty quickly.
Are you aware of that?
I would assume you've tried cases in Tallahassee.
But co-defendants related to this case that we're here about have been tried here in Tallahassee. Are you aware of that?
I am.
Okay, thank you. In the spreadsheet this was one, I think it was in Exhibit 1, Tab 1, where Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson appearances in the media.
Oh, that's right. So we can look at Charlie's trial, Catherine McManus' trial, and then the other two, the Hitman's trial as well, to see how hard it was for them to find a jury.
Are lumped together. Are you familiar with what I'm referencing?
Like, even though with Donna, more time has passed technically, but Charlie's happened, was like 2-3 years ago. So I guess the defense can argue that, like, oh, hey, it's been 2 to 3 years since we did a, a jury survey. And so since then, there could have been more media coverage, blah, 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 blah. So I guess they can do another research thing where they look at the time from Charlie's trial to now to see if the jury pool became even more potentially tainted because of their knowledge about this case. Right? Request for a venue change, awaited backdoor to a new judge motion. Yeah, so they put it in motion for a new judge, I think a couple months back, and it was like initially filed under sealed, and then they unsealed it. But yeah, it's basically maybe a way to circumvent that.
Is it the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Getting creative here.
Yeah.
Why were Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson lumped together for purposes of that presentation?
I would have to speak with the client and the media monitoring team to see why that query was built that way.
What? Go get the media monitoring team in here. We want to hear from them.
That would be my answer.
Were the numbers ever run for Donna Adelson alone?
I'm sure they were. In the course of testing queries, we run in many different ways. Ultimately,
No?
we arrive at a query that best captures the media exposure specific to what the parameters are around the case our client has asked us to be engaged on.
What?
Okay,
Did
so
you answer
I think that kind of gets
Did you answer the question? Okay, sorry. She's.
The client has asked us to be engaged on.
Okay, so I think that kind of gets to my next question. Who made the decision to lump Charlie in with Donna in the data included on Defense Exhibit
Defense
1?
team?
I would say, I don't know. It would be a collaborative discussion between the client and our analysis team and our search strategist.
Okay, but ultimately, if you have data for Donna alone and data for Charlie and Donna together, who's going to decide what shows up in Defense Exhibit 1? You?
Wait, so, okay, so I'm assuming he's like the owner of this company. If he wasn't the actual person who ran these inquiries himself, why not have them testify, I guess? Right? Because she's asking, like, okay, well, why did you guys decide to lump Donna and Charlie together in your inquiry? I'm not too sure. I need to ask, the media monitoring team. And then it's like, well, who made the decision? It's like, I don't know. It's either the client or the research strategist. Would it be better to have the person who did the actual work on this to be testifying about it? Or is that like too low level of a position? And then I don't know, because I feel like that would be in the reports, no, or something like that. Lauren, hi Lauren. Lauren, thank you so much for joining the membership, guys. Please welcome Lauren. Hello. New member, enjoy your emotes and welcome. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Or the client?
It's going to be
The numbers probably look bad for Donna alone. Yo, let's get Charlie up in here too.
a combination. We would probably offer a recommendation since in these cases, either name is probably not in the news for another issue. And we often would search to see if, I'll say John Smith, if he's involved in the case as a alleged conspirator or whatever, also has a car dealership that frequently advertises that mentions his name. We'll check to see if there's other contributing stories. If there's not, then we'll make a determination that if it would be statistically impossible to mention Donna Adelson without mentioning Charlie Adelson, we'll run the names together because the query is functionally one subject. Now, if either party in that query starts to exhibit a volume of content on their own and not in relation to the other party, we would separate that and at least counsel our client that we should run this separately.
Okay, so are you able to tell
But he still doesn't know. He's just saying that what could have possibly happened.
the court how many of those articles that represent Donna and Charlie together in how many of those does Charlie's name only appear in without Donna? So I'm not really.
Yeah, that's actually really weird too. Why not just do a separate inquiry for Charlie and Donna? Because of course the state's going to pick at it. The state's basically is going to say, hey, did you lump Charlie and Donna together to get a bigger number? Or a bigger number? Larger number? Larger number?
Really, after I asked the question incorrectly, let me start over.
Start over.
I asked how many for Donna alone, but what I'm really interested in is how many does Donna's name appear in, period.
That would be done with a, you could do a simple search in the spreadsheet and, search not for a name, Charlie, or only for Donna, and see how many of those 2,000 plus stories only mention one name.
Is that something you could do for us
Right now?
Right now, or that's something that takes time and analysis to perform?
It would take, I wouldn't want to do it live
Isn't it a spreadsheet? Can't you filter that?
on TV. I want to make sure we followed our methodology and protocol
Okay.
and have two sets of eyes check it.
Okay.
So you don't have that data to provide to us right now as far as how many does Donna's name appear in?
The data's there, we would just have to, or someone on your side or another could sort it.
Okay.
It seems easy,
When we're
right?
talking about opportunities to see a particular article or content, does that presume that all Leon residents actually have the same likelihood of seeing the content?
They all have an equal probability of being able to see the content.
Hey, I get it. Performance issue, that's a tough one too. Okay, I would probably struggle with that as well if I were to do it live. But I don't know if it's my bread and butter and, I'm like a genius at my Excel spreadsheet that I created. It's like, you could probably just do it live, just like sort it really quick, right? I don't know. He made it sound like it was really easy that the prosecutor could just do it themselves.
Okay, but actual views could be consumed repeatedly by one viewer and not at all by another, correct?
That's a possibility.
All right, so if you're saying I had 376 opportunities to see this content, it's possible that I, as an individual, could have actually not seen any of it.
That is a possibility.
And it's 376 total opportunities over how many years?
It's giving he knows the numbers are different, but doesn't want to expose it right now on the stand. Or potentially, my client won't like it if I do it right now and expose the real number. Oh, okay, all right, let me go back. All right, so 376 opportunities. All right, are they like, okay, I'm going to speed up a tiny bit.
Have the same likelihood of seeing the content?
They all have an equal probability of being able to see the content.
Okay, but actual views could be consumed repeatedly by one viewer and not at all by another, correct?
That's a possibility.
All right, so if you're saying I had 376 by one viewer and not at all by another, correct?
That's a possibility.
All right, so if you're saying I had 376 opportunities to see this content, it's possible that I, as an individual, could have actually not seen any of it.
That is a possibility.
And it's 376 total opportunities over how many years?
11?
I believe about 11.
Okay. And so I think in your math of memory, we can agree that the passage of time in general does not serve our memory well. Can we agree with that?
That is true.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah, 11 years. You could forget some of the details.
So I would need to ask a particular juror, how long ago did you see the content and how much do you remember from the content to really know what that juror remembers, right?
To know what an individual knows or can reveal, that would be correct.
How many opportunities does the average person, adult, have in an average day to have an impression from any content? And I guess I'm thinking of, waking up, picking up my phone, scrolling this morning, turning on the news, riding to work, listening to a streaming service
Good question. Good question.
on the way to work. I've already been bombarded with a bunch of opportunities, haven't I? Just today.
Yeah.
I would need to know where you live.
Okay, but in general, let's just take the folks in this room that are sitting in here now. Like, we've already had a lot of opportunities to observe content. Would you agree?
I would think so. I don't know you, so I don't know what your propensity to consume news is.
But you deal in averages, and you're telling us what the average adult has the opportunity to consume based on that data.
Right. So I think if you look at the control story for a car crash, that would give you your answer. I think it was 6 opportunities to be seen, or 4, something like that.
Right, but we're bombarded with this stuff all day, every day, is my point.
I don't see relevance to the question for me.
Oh, man. I don't know, man. This expert sounds a little bit evasive. I think anyone can understand that, hey, the moment you wake up and the moment you go to sleep, how much shit are you bombarded with, right? There's like all this stuff on social media, on the news, on the TV. Like, yes, it seems like 376 opportunities is a lot, but it could just all be washed away with all the other shit that you're bombarded with in your everyday life. So I think that's something he should be able to agree with. But he doesn't want to because maybe Donna's team won't be happy. I don't know. I feel like we need like objectivity here. I did like the way he sounded earlier. Sounded like he knew his shit. I do not do the TikToks really, right? I like watching Instagram reels and YouTube videos, but like TikTok, like, I can't.
Okay. All right, so can we agree that actual memories of an individual vary? I mean, again, going back to what you were saying about I'm dealing with averages and probabilities, an individual might have differences based on their actual exposure to the content, based on their actual ability to retain information, based on their interest in the topic, based on what else is going on in their lives, their age, and lots of other factors. Would you agree with that?
I would.
You said the average person, the average Leon juror has been exposed, or at least had the opportunity to view material about this case 26 times. Is that right? Did I get that
That
right?
is correct.
Okay. And do we know how many of those 26 contain the name Donna Adelson?
All 26 stories would contain the search term. So these are 26 opportunities to see the specific story about, I believe in this case, Donna Adelson.
Okay, but it's got Charlie lumped in with it, doesn't it?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And based on those 26 opportunities, you talked about the math of memory and how after a certain number of exposures, a person is likely to retain some of that information up to the rest of their life. Are you able to tell us what information is likely to be retained by a juror who's had these 26 exposures?
Yeah, it's the test on the model is can recall 80% of the details.
Okay. And so would it surprise you to learn that previously when we've asked
Okay, so, and then you said the average person, the average Leon County juror, has been exposed or at least had the opportunity to view the material about this case 26 times. And again, that was lumping Donna Adelson and Charlie together, not just Donna. All right. Oh, she is such a master at what she does. She's so good at it.
Recall 80% of the details.
And so would it surprise you to learn that previously when we've asked jurors about this case, we get about a third that don't know anything, a third that know the headlines, and a third that have more detailed information? Does that comport with your work, or does that seem inconsistent with your work?
I'm unfamiliar with your procedure for selecting a jury.
Okay, but based on your analysis, does that sound about right, that that's what we would expect, or would you expect something different?
I can't, it's outside of my area of expertise. Jury selection, I don't do.
But you're saying they would retain 80% of the information if they had been exposed 26 times. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying the probability of an average person in your county, I believe you're in Leon County, that would be the probability of an average person of jury selection age.
The probability of the average person of jury selection age who was in fact exposed 26 times, retaining 80% of the information.
Had the opportunity to be exposed 26 times.
Okay. But they definitely have to actually be exposed to get any of the retention that we're talking about.
Yes.
That is true.
Then we can't know that unless we ask them.
knowing, yeah, I guess I can't. My work is in the probability of people before they enter your room. So all I can speak to is the probability of the people you might encounter during a jury selection process. I can't answer a question about who you will encounter during a jury selection process.
Right. Understood. No further questions.
Nice job.
So during that roughly 10 and a half year period, there were 376 opportunities to be seen
In Leon County.
in Leon County. And then,
Per person.
and since then, since
Why are we going over this again? It's not like we're going over it again for the jury. The judge probably understands. I feel like we don't have to hash out what was already said on direct and then cross-examination.
January, that number has remained constant or has it increased?
If there's been any media coverage, which we know there has been, then that number has gone up. But since we are presenting that in the analysis, I won't speak to how much. But I stated earlier, we are on track to exceed 2024 total opportunities to be seen based on media coverage and impressions.
So if I were to tell you that the initial arrest took place in 2016, would that correlate with the data where there was a significant increase in the number of stores?
Yeah, we would look through that number to make sure that you're correct, but that fact that you state is, or would be indicated by that peak.
And the same, in 2019 was the initial trial, would that also correlate with the peak in the data that's identified in exhibit slide?
Yes, anytime there's an element to a long-running topic in the media of significance, you'll see a peak like that.
Elected in this case, is it fair to say that the overwhelming number of publications and
Donna has a very inflated sense of self-importance, methinks. Yeah, Donna, Lori Vallow, Sarah Boone.
based on the analysis of the data that was conducted in this case, would you agree that the overwhelming number of publications and broadcasts concerning the story took place in Leon County, Florida?
That is correct, yes.
And that, statistically speaking, Miami-Dade County, with a significantly greater population, has a significantly less media exposure in this case.
That is true.
Nothing further. 5 is listening to podcasts, 77 pages long, individual podcasts. There is some overlap between platforms. However, it's not just the podcast that we're asking the court to consider, but also what people are saying during those podcasts. The effect on the listener that those podcasts have and the comments that the public makes are where we are seeing the most significant prejudice. The vitriol towards Mrs. Adelson, to her son, to her daughter, and we also see in those a number of podcasts. I ran a search yesterday. I counted over 20 different episodes just focused on inadmissible information. As Your Honor is aware, prior counsel in the state, you had an in-camera hearing last September. I'm not going to go into detail about what was contained in that. Unfortunately, back in December, when Your Honor authorized that to be transcribed, it was not sealed when it was posted to the clerk's website. Media outlets from all over the country obtained that information. They obtained the transcripts, they published the transcripts in full, they analyzed them in their podcasts, so now...
What's the December transcript again? Donna Adelson, December transcript hearing. There was a transcript in December that was supposed to be sealed. Let me see. Oh, read it. Interesting. Recently unsealed hearing. Rob Adelson. Oh, is it the one about...
What Your Honor has ruled to be inadmissible is out there. It's out there, and as I said in my motion, you can't unring that bell. One of the facts...
Okay, but like, I mean, can they select a jury pool that doesn't know shit about that? I think they probably can. That's like for people that are like really following the case. In my opinion. Let me see. What's going on in December? Let me see if we can find out what he's talking about.
Factors is whether the publicity has included information that would be inadmissible at trial. In addition to...
Transcript sealed. Damn, who who uploaded it without sealing the transcript? Yikes. Well, mistakes happen. Slurs. I don't remember this. Who was using slurs? Oh, hold on. Did someone accuse Donna of using slurs? Who was it towards? It was found inadmissible at the end, though. They did a deposition. They said that Donna's pretty sharp. Or that Donna's gullible? No, Donna's sharp. She's not someone who is gullible or could pull the wool over their eyes easily or something like that. Okay. Who is this person, though? So this is a transcript that was uploaded in December, but it's from a hearing that happened in October when Rashbaum was still the attorney. Oh, hold on a second. Is this her son saying that Donna was, like, using slurs or something? Oh, yeah, I think so. Mother-son relationship. Okay. I didn't know that this transcript was supposed to be sealed. I must have downloaded it before they sealed it. Oopsies. Yeah, something about Donna's a very smart woman. Very sharp. She's not gullible. So I guess, like, that goes towards, I don't know, maybe he was trying to say that, hey, Donna's not a gullible person. Like, if you're trying to argue that Donna was gullible and she was tricked by Charlie Adelson into being involved in this murder-for-hire scheme, maybe don't believe it. I mean, I guess since it's supposed to be sealed, I'm not going to read it. But I feel like we already have covered this, though, in a live stream somewhere. Okay, and the court is saying that because of a highly inflammatory nature, putting a racial slur before the jury, similar to you, I can imagine a context in which this would occur. All right, and there's like some slurs. I don't know. I don't know what Donna said. I wonder who the slurs were directed towards. Was it directed towards, you think, Robert Adelson's wife at the time? Because Donna Adelson had an issue with Haritha. And then she also had issues with Dan Markel. Seems like she just had issues with her children, significant others. I wonder if she got along with Charlie's significant other. Or, I don't know if Charlie's even married or not. I know that he has a kid, but I don't know if he's married or if it's like, he had a child with like his girlfriend or something. I don't know. I remember hearing Charlie was kind of a, I don't know, a ladies' man or something like that. Is that what it's called? Ladies' man?
That inadmissible information.
He had a lot of girlfriends.
You know, we still don't yet know which audio recordings the state intends to seek to admit in the trial. However, there are audio recordings that we submit would not be admissible against Mrs. Adelson. It's our position, Your Honor, that co-conspirator exception, the conspiracy ended when the murder took place. The conspiracy did not continue to extend beyond that. As a result, any of the statements that were made in 2016 on the wire by other individuals, other than Mrs. Adelson, are not included under the co-conspirator exception. And those would be...
We would have to, I think, handle this through a separate motion in limine or argument as to that hearing, but as to the completion of the murder...
I know, it's still baffling to me that they bought a one-way ticket. Those motherfuckers were so cheap, they could even do a round way. Oh, not a round way, a round trip. It's like, at least get a round trip ticket, jeez, to make it look like you were going to come back. Damn, she bought a one-way ticket. I'm like, how much money did you save on that? I mean, she would have probably get pulled regardless, but I mean, come on. At least make it look like you were trying to come back. You know, at least if you did get caught, you could argue like, hey, no, I bought a round trip ticket. You know, I had intentions of coming back.
being one part of it, yes, as the conspiracy being ongoing for the conspirators never to reveal what their role is. Does that ever hit, Mr. Zellman?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
For the persons who may have participated in the conspiracy, would that not always be an ongoing thing, so their role is never revealed?
The way that this is charged, Your Honor, I would say no. It's charged with conspiracy to commit a murder, not conspiracy to cover up a murder.
Very well, please continue.
So you have, it is our position, inadmissible information.
Oh, is that two separate charges you can charge someone with? Conspiracy to commit murder and not a conspiracy to cover up a murder? Is that what?
That has been publicized. And it's nobody's fault for the vast majority of the information. This case has been tried 3 times. Each trial has been live streamed. All of the testimony has been publicized. So as to what could have...
Maybe he was being facetious. I think he was being facetious. Like, I wasn't sure. I don't fucking know.
Have been done prior to our involvement on behalf of Mrs. Adelson, all of that evidence was already out there. And it's our position, Your Honor, that with respect to those statements that are not admissible as to Mrs.
If you're dumb enough to announce you're running away from arrest on a recorded prison call, you're most definitely also dumb enough to purchase one-way tickets. I think she didn't know the call was recording because she thought she hung up, right? Because I think initially I thought that she said she was going to, maybe off herself, that she was going to escape and all that stuff. I initially thought she just told Charlie that, which I was confused. I was like, why would she tell Charlie that if she was, she knows the call is recorded? But then it makes more sense if she thought that the phone call was, she thought that it was terminated, but she just forgot to hang up the cell phone on her end, and it continued recording all her fucking plans and the people that were there. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
On behalf of Mrs. Adelson, all of that evidence was already out there. And it's our position, Your Honor, that with respect to those statements that are not admissible as to Mrs. Adelson. And to back up, Your Honor, once the state identifies which wire recordings they intend to use, we certainly will file a motion limiting and ask for a pretrial ruling, so we're not dealing with that during trial and potentially wasting the jury's time. But we can't do that just yet, because we have to wait for them to identify the calls.
And you're referring to the most recent wiretap or the wiretap from 2016?
Both.
Very well.
Wait, sorry. Are you referring to the most recent wiretap or the wiretap from 2016? What's the most recent wiretap? I know that they wiretapped Harvey's phone because they thought Donna and Harvey were trying to intimidate witnesses. Is that what they're referring to, or something else? I don't see why they would refer to that, though, because they've already kind of, I think, axed that. I think that wasn't proven. Does anyone know what other wiretaps they could be talking about?
Another factor that Manning tells us
Because the 2016 wiretap was the one that was after the bump.
to consider is the timing. I'm sorry, Preston Oates tell us the timing of publicity relative to the incident in the trial. So historically, courts have said, okay, well, we're going to continue this trial a year, 18 months, 2 years, so that the original publicity has died down, and that won't factor into potential jurors' minds. That's not something that exists in this case. As exhibit, let's see, I believe it's exhibit 3, indicates the publicity that has taken place in this case has not died down. There's been an ebb and flow over the years. So initially in 2014, there was, obviously that's when it first happened, there was significant coverage. That died in 2015 during the investigation. And then in 2016, once the arrests were started, the initial plea by Mr.
I mean, it's been ramping up, I guess, because for the last, 6 months? What? I don't know if I even remember what happened in the last 6 months. In the last 6 months, Donna and Harvey were accused of witness tampering. They had their shit wiretapped. I think ultimately it was found that was unproven. Then there was Donna's trial being delayed. And then there was Donna saying that she didn't like the conditions of her jail cell and that she wanted to be released until her trial. You're probably trying to run away. And then Donna testifying about how she was being threatened by the inmate and how she was forced to buy commissary, and then she testified. She tried to get the judge removed from this case. A lot has happened in the past 6 months. And that's only naming probably just 5 of them on my hand. I think there's more. You don't remember what you did last week? Fair enough.
Bear was entered, and Ms. McVanner was arrested. There was a great deal of volume of coverage. 2017 and 2018, it died down. 2019, the first trial, it increased significantly. And then in 2020, 2021, it died down. 2022, during Ms. McVanner's second trial. 23, for Mr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson's trial. 2024, 2025, all of those increased. And as Mr. Murphy indicated in his testimony and in Exhibit 3, specifically slide number 3 of that exhibit, the media coverage in 2025 is on track to suppress last year's totals. Last year's media impressions exceeded 92 million. So it tells us that the timing of publicity, it's not going to die down. It's going to continue to circle. I mean, we're sitting here, we have reporters typing behind us. This hearing is probably being broadcast live, And
Shit, he knows I'm here. Hide. Quick, guys.
so that weighs in favor
We're exposed.
of granting the motion. With respect to all of the podcasts that have been identified in Defense Exhibit 5, as well as any commentary that is contained within those podcasts that members of the public are able to provide their own insight on. Your Honor, reviewing that information, it becomes clear that the community's hostility towards the defendant is overwhelming. The sentiment from all of those podcasts, not necessarily the hosts of those podcasts, but for a vast majority of them, yes, for the hosts, but for the people who comment on those podcasts.
All right, guys. He's basically asking us for some more. We gotta stop the hate comments. We need to have some supporting comments for Donna. Okay, more comments of support for Donna, please. More love for Donna. Show your love and support for Donna Adelson in the chat.
Podcast, the vast majority of it exhibits hostility towards the defendant, and in almost every single one of them, where you have the talking heads offering their opinions, the vast majority of them offer their opinions about Mrs. Adelson's guilt or innocence and are publicizing it. And the vast majority are saying that she is guilty, and they are skewing the reporting in a way to support their theories. All of that's in evidence, Your Honor. I'm asking the court to consider that in reviewing the factors that the court is supposed to consider.
This case is so wild that there is nothing you need to skew. It's already out there, and it's pretty fucking crazy. Like the details that we know so far, the wiretapping stuff that we heard, the body cam. Well, we only saw the body cam with Donna and stuff like that. Like. And then Donna trying to escape and go to fucking Vietnam. You don't need to skew this in any way to make it in our favor or against Donna's favor. The shit's out there. It's bad for Donna because it's bad for Donna, not because people are contriving the details to make it bad for Donna. It's pretty bad for Donna.
And I want to highlight, Your Honor.
Love for Donna Adelson. Donna's awesome at laundering money with a washing machine. True. She should have her own laundry business. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Before I wrap that up, actually, there is another factor that needs to be taken into consideration, and that's when a confession is featured in news media coverage of a prosecution. Confession of Mr. Rivera and Catherine.
Donna displays robust self-confidence and a comprehensive knowledge of non-extradition political geography. Look at you guys. You guys are so nice.
Banwa. It's not only been published, but their testimony has been broadcast on live television, summarized in local print news media, as well as the podcasts. Now, I recognize...
Let's break them down as individuals, because with Mr. Rivera, I believe his testimony has always been that he went and did a murder for hire as a paid job. He did not know who essentially the principal was, but it was organized through his friend's girlfriend.
Correct.
In that way, how exactly is that a confession that implicates your client?
Well, I'm trying to find that part here. Mr. Rivera is not as significant a factor as the testimony of Ms. McDowell. Her testimony in Mr. Adelson's trial, her proffers, transcripts of which have all been released to the public, and the recordings of which I presume have all been released to the public, detail her recitation of what happened and directly tie into Mrs. Adelson's alleged...
I mean, I know that Catherine McBanois admitted that Donna Adelson was there when Catherine went to Charlie's house and that the money was wet and stapled. Did she say anything else about Donna? And then also Donna was cutting her the checks for working at her, non-existent position at the dental office.
Involvement in this this murder. So now I reckon that factor comes from Oliver, as I indicated in my memorandum.
Question, Bryan, are you a manager by any chance? I feel like I'm getting manager vibes from you because that sounds like an employee. You know when you do your quarterly or your yearly employee reviews? I feel like I'm seeing the same language here. Donna displays robust self-confidence and comprehensive knowledge of non-extradition political geography.
Recognize that Oliver has been restricted and refined. In Hoy, one of the cases that restriction refines Oliver, The detective summary of the confession was published, as well as 3 contradictory statements made by the defendant. Here, no statement by Mrs. Adelson has been published except for the statement that was released, I believe, back in 2016 by her then attorneys, denying any involvement. However,
That was a statement she made, or just that the attorneys made in response to a press release?
it was a press release from her attorneys.
Directly quoting her, or just
No.
on behalf of the family in general?
Is on behalf of the family. That's the only thing I believe that is.
Donna's continued a deep understanding for her son Charlie, even when he was hooking up with the criminal underworld, and kept supporting him and making his dreams come true. Very supportive mother, almost extremely so. Definitely extremely so. A very involved mother in the in her children's life or children's lives.
Has been published on behalf of Mrs. Adelson, but it's not a statement directly from her.
Please continue.
So you have the confession as another factor there. And what I want to say, Your Honor, is quoting from Singer versus State, the Florida Supreme Court said, every trial court in considering a motion for change of venue must liberally resolve in favor of the defendant any doubt as the ability of the state to furnish a defendant a trial by a fair and impartial jury. Every reasonable precaution should be taken to preserve to a defendant trial by such a jury. And to this end, if there is a reasonable basis shown for a change of venue, a motion therefore properly made should be granted. A change of venue may sometimes inconvenience the state, yet we can see no way in which it can cause any real damage to it. On the other hand, granting a change of venue in a questionable case is certain to eliminate a possible error and to eliminate a costly retrial if it is determined that the venue should have been changed. That pretrial publicity on its own can still be a basis.
As a point of law, I don't believe your reading of Singer is wrong. However, these cases are refined over time. I believe Singer was 1959.
Yes, sir.
Cases that are almost as old as my father, they're still good, but they do change over time.
1959.
I agree, Your Honor, but it's the case law also cannot be overruled by implication. No higher court, no Florida Supreme Court case has said definitively that Singer is no longer good law.
Very well. State, you may provide your rebuttal argument.
Judge, what I learned from the defense expert is that there's been a lot of publicity in this case, which I think we all already knew, as is their right to report on a case that's been of high interest to this community, and that we have a high probability that we'll encounter some prospective jurors who know something about this case, something I think we all already knew. What and how much and whether they formed a fixed or definite opinion are factors relevant only to those individuals and can only be learned at jury selection. Similarly, who has consumed inadmissible discussions of inadmissible evidence? We can only learn that by asking them who's listened to these particular podcasts, and I trust that the defense will do that. The defendant has the burden to show this court that there is a reasonable likelihood that prejudice against her in our community will prevent her from receiving a fair trial. How do we know if the facts or the media coverage of a case has prejudiced us such that the citizens of this community where this crime occurred are not capable of rendering a verdict based solely on the evidence that's presented in court, except in the most exceptional circumstances, which I can imagine, to answer your question about Smith versus Singer, I can imagine, maybe a George Floyd or a circumstance where the answer might be to avoid attempting to pick a jury because there's no point there. But this certainly isn't a case like that. The defendant in their own motion cite Lozano. Lozano is a third DCA opinion, not binding on this court, and distinguishable from our case. But according to Lozano, a change of venue is appropriate where legitimate community safety concerns might influence a jury's verdict. Lozano was a racially charged incident in which a Miami police officer shot and killed a motorcyclist and his passenger, whereby they then crashed into 2 other citizens, injuring them. And it sparked...
Wait, what? Shot and killed the motorcyclist and the passenger? Why? Were they running away from a crime or something like that? Jesus. And then they crash into other people?
Protests in that community immediately upon the incident occurring. There were riots in the Miami area, which caused school closures. A 130-block area of the town was cordoned off for crowd control, and the use of tear gas was deployed against the members of that crowd by law enforcement. So in the Lozano...
that was back in 1989. I thought this was recent. I was like, oh, I've never heard about this before. 1989 sparked the Miami riot after Miami Police Department Shot a black motorcyclist on January 16, 1989. Oh, 1989. Lloyd, 23, was fleeing from another MPD officer who was chasing him from an alleged traffic violation. A traffic violation? Jesus. Okay. Well, times were... I would say times were different back then, but...
Opinion, the court said that a fair trial could not be conducted in an atmosphere in which the entire community was so obviously, penetrated by the feels that resulted from this incident, which was basically like a lightning rod in the community. And the
You
court
literally couldn't get through the courtroom door, essentially, to start the case.
Right. I mean, I can imagine a situation where you can't pick a jury under a situation like that, where the jurors are potentially concerned about their own safety or the safety of the community if they render a particular verdict over the other choice.
So they're basically saying Donna's case is nowhere near the Lozano case. Hey, straight, Donna.
Dan Markel's death was felt deeply by many in this community. I certainly would never argue the contrary, but it's distinguishable from an incident like Lozano, which involved a community reaction driven by underlying social, economic, political factors, widespread fears within the community, and is prone to sparking something like a violent outbreak. Nobody's going to start a riot based on Donna Adelson's verdict, whichever way it goes.
She's also one hell of an actress. Not a good one, but an actress nonetheless. Look at these nice comments for Donna. Should we forward them over to her in our little tablet?
And spread it out evenly among all the people. And that's just not how the world works. Some people are going to pursue content. Some people aren't going to see it at all. Others are going to just look at headlines. Those people are still eligible to be jurors unless they formed a fixed or definite opinion about guilt or innocence based on those headlines. So to divide all content by every eligible juror and say, oh, you've all got 376 exposures to this, you're all ineligible. It's just fuzzy math.
So you're saying going from the general of what the math might be to the specific of if we take a random person off the street, we still need to ask, what do you know, what have you heard?
I think so.
Please continue.
I think that would be appropriate in this circumstance. I'm not saying it would be necessary or required in all circumstances, but certainly here, where the media content, yes, there's a spike because something's going on, stuff is happening, but it's the same, I think, going to turn out to be the same people consuming this stuff over and over and over again, and those people probably won't be eligible to be jurors, but as we've learned...
That's us right there. That's us. Us. We're consuming it over and over and over and over again.
From experience, there's going to be a lot of people that are still eligible, and I think we should at least try before we take this case away from the county in which it occurred and move it elsewhere. Certainly, I can't imagine a planet on which we move this case to Miami, which seems to be suggested by the defense.
Miami. Okay.
I mentioned when I was cross-examining the expert who had no knowledge of this, but I think that State's Exhibit 1 will reflect that about a third in our individual voir dires on previous jury selections had no knowledge of this case, which might be surprising to some of the people in this room who are consuming it regularly, but not everybody consumes this stuff. And about a third had very limited knowledge. Those people are still mostly eligible to become jurors. And then there's a third that have more detailed knowledge, and some of them didn't have fixed opinions and were still eligible to become jurors in the case. So while many jurors were disqualified in those proceedings based on their knowledge and their feelings about the case, there were plenty that weren't. We picked a jury in 2 days on the first 2 trials and in 3 on the third. On the third trial, we had a defense jury expert flown in from Manhattan to drill down specifically on individual voir dire regarding publicity. And that was a time-consuming process, and we still were able to successfully get an unbiased jury that was agreeable to both sides in 3 business days.
I was reading my emails really quick. Okay, we picked a jury in 2 days in the first 2 trials, and then 3 on the third. Oh. On the third trial, we had a defense jury expert flown in from Manhattan to drill down specific individual voir dire regarding publicity. Not bad. 2 to 3 days, not bad.
I'll review your exhibit, but do you recall of the jury that was actually selected, what was the breakdown of no knowledge, some knowledge, or stated they would set their knowledge aside?
My recollection is that it was roughly a third, a third, a third. But
And this is the most recent jury.
yes,
Go ahead.
I've just noticed that pattern both in voir dire, who we end up with, repeating itself throughout, my life that has become this trial. It's happening over and over again. So can I say specifically that what we ended up with was that?
Hey, Georgia, we commend you for this, okay? Dude, I wonder how old Georgia was when she first started on this case. Because, yeah, that's true. It's like 11 years of her life, too. Or not 11 years, maybe less than 11 years. Because they probably started getting on it in, like, 2016, right?
Breakdown, no. But that has been my observation over time. It's like, gosh, there's a third of the community out here that still has never even heard of this thing. So I'm suspecting they're still out there. There has been a peak. Maybe we'll try and learn otherwise, and it won't be possible. I don't think that's going to happen, though, Judge. We're going to weed out the folks that are not eligible until we get down to a panel that's acceptable, and then we're going to proceed with other questioning. And this goes to the Smith case that Your Honor brought up earlier. In Hanyard, again, all the prospective jurors had heard something about the case, but each agreed they had not formed a fixed opinion about guilt. Each agreed to consider only the evidence presented in trial in making a decision, and so the motion for a change of venue in that case was also properly denied. We have not yet attempted to select a jury, but we have every reason to think we should, as recommended by the Florida Supreme Court. Your Honor brought up Rawling v. State, and I highlighted that one as well, that outlines the two prongs. Prong number one, the extent and nature of the publicity. We do have extensive publicity, but I don't think we have sufficient evidence that the nature of it has been improper or inflammatory such to infect the jury venire as a whole. And the second prong, of course, is the difficulty encountered when actually selecting a jury. Again, we should, but have not yet tried to select a jury. And again, we have the benefit from the previous efforts to suggest that we will be successful in selecting a jury in this case.
I'm looking at the Adelson family. Imagine trying to make a legacy of philanthropy, and it's overshadowed by half of the family plotting a murder.
In page 3 of defendant's motion, she relies on Oliver for the proposition that published confessions should be full of venue change. Oliver was a case in which the Tallahassee Democrat published a summarized transcript of the defendant's confession before his trial. I think Your Honor got to this a little bit in your questioning of the defense, but Oliver's not applicable here because there is no confession here. If there's a confession of Donna Adelson, could someone please send it to me post haste? So hence, the confession of Donna Adelson has not been published. They cite the testimony of co-defendants, Magdanois and Rivera, which one is not the same thing as publishing her confession as Oliver, as what happened in Oliver. And also, neither of these witnesses really offer testimony tantamount to a confession, Donna Adelson, which I think Your Honor pointed out. The defendant's motion concludes with a citation from a concurring opinion in the Irvin case about the inability of a juror to set aside information that has saturated the media. Here again, the statement was authored in 1961 when it was possible for a media outlet to permeate a community in a way that is no longer possible. Irvin is, of course, still good law, as are all of these old cases that we're talking about. But as Your Honor pointed out, it's your decision it's within your discretion to make a decision based on the circumstances of this case that are present today, which are significantly different from 1961, in which very few women sat on juries because they were only eligible if they voluntarily registered with the clerk, expressing a desire to be placed on a jury list. That's how we did jury selection in 1961. How many volunteers do you think we get if we ran?
Probably not a lot. Who here would voluntarily want to be a part of a jury selection?
Jury selection.
Not me.
In that manner for everyone.
Things have changed. Time moves on.
In addition, in the Irvin case, that took place in Gibson County, Indiana, population 30,000 back in 1961. Again, very different from the demographics that we have here and the population we have to choose from here.
Really? Me? Okay, good for you guys. For me, it's like I can't do the, it's the sitting and uncomfortable seats for too long. Yeah, the breaks. Yeah, I can't.
I will review all of the exhibits that were admitted as a part of the hearing today that I was not able to do so prior to the hearing. I believe the jury selections for Magdanois and Charles Adelson are the state's exhibits, the charts and graphs that previously were updated or I did not have access to. A written ruling will be issued. We are in recess.
Your Honor, can we reserve to file a supplemental affidavit to address the concern that Your Honor raised at the beginning of the...
Anytime when I see or hear FBI, I think of the FBI soundtrack that Emily Baker has on her stream. The FBI.
hearing?
You may.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Oh no, the feds got caught. What happened? All right, Donna's leaving y'all. All right, guys, everyone, give her a round of applause.
Sure.
How's her hair tied too tight or something like that?
Me and the jump drives, so I was already able to put a sticky on.
There goes Donna.
Okay. Get the state's jump drive.
Donna looks like she's eating pretty well in jail. Oh, I forgot that she was complaining, saying that like it's all carbs. Like she's not getting enough protein and shit. Bye, Donna.
That's the defense's.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for the Donna Adelson hearing. The judge is going to reserve his ruling, and we'll see if he decides on a change in venue. Me thinks no. I don't think so. I don't think the defense put up enough of an argument, it seems, to convince the judge to change venue. I thought the state did a really good job in arguing back. I'm like, should I recap this? No, it's so long and I'm really hungry, so I'm not going to recap it. But we've been recapping through the entire time as we were watching this, so if you guys were paying attention, if you guys were here. She can't get the hair tie. Maybe not, I guess. Maybe it could be used as like a weapon or, contraband in jail or something like that. All right, y'all. So we'll see what the judge says. Again, Donna Adelson did try to have this judge removed, and that was not successful. So maybe, some of you guys were thinking, oh, well, she wants to have a change of venue. That would also include, possibly having a new judge oversee this. So maybe that's a way for her to circumvent the motion being denied. Oh, wait, there is a Bryan Kohberger. Yes, there's a Bryan Kohberger hearing this week for a motion to continue. That's not sealed. However, they do have a motion for the alternate perpetrators. That part is going to be sealed. Yeah, that's for Bryan Kohberger. Okay. We'll keep an eye on that one, too. And then we'll see you guys July 25th for the Lori Vallow sentencing. You guys have a good one. Take care, and I will see y'all later. Bye, y'all. Bye.